we're taking a look at the most interesting details to come out of this lawsuit targeting JOANN executives. Welcome to Sewing Report Live. I'm Jen. I do news and commentary covering the sewing and crafts world. And we've already done sort of an overview of this lawsuit that is accusing JOANN executives and employees of fraudulently misrepresenting the state of the company. It's been filed on behalf of several of the former vendors, but I wanted to take a closer look and really pick out some of the most interesting allegations from this lawsuit. So that is what we are doing. A couple disclaimers before we get started. One, I am not an attorney and this is not official legal analysis. I'm just someone who took the time to read the entire lawsuit. Also, this is an unscripted video and it will have pretty minimal editing. I'm not a perfect speaker, so just keep that in mind. If you are going to leave a comment, be sure to take a look at my community rules before you do so. And also, you have to remember that this is a civil lawsuit that's been filed on behalf of the plaintiffs, which are the vendors. This is not necessarily factual. These are claims being made by the plaintiffs in this case. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. We have not yet seen the defense or a response from the defendants, so we don't know what they're saying in response to these claims. So again, these are allegations being made by several of JOANN's former vendors. All right, so if you missed the last video, I want to give you a quick bird's eye view of this lawsuit. So the lawsuit was filed in an Ohio court, and it now looks like it's sitting in a U.S. District Court in the Northern District of Ohio. And here's the major players. So the plaintiffs are all of these former vendors: Advantus, Fairfield, Gwen Studios, Low Tech Toy Club, Ormo, Ithalat, Ihracat from Turkey, and Springs Creative Products Group. So these companies were all vendors to JOANN's, so they sold JOANN product that JOANN then resold to customers like us. The defendants are Michael Prendergast, Jeffrey Dwyer. Those are both executives that were brought in around early to mid 2024 after the first bankruptcy. And they were from Alvarez and Marshall, which was a consulting firm. Michael Prendergast was the interim CEO for JOANN's. Jeffrey Dwyer was the interim CFO. So these are the players. All right, Robert Will, he was the former chief merchandising officer, and that's very important. So all of these folks, other than Michael and Jeffrey, they were all existing JOANN employees. They did not come in from that outside firm. So you got Robert Will, Christopher DiTullio, I believe he was like the chief customer officer, but he was also, again, he was a JOANN executive and he was pretty involved with this company. Heather Holody or Holiday, she was in, believe, merchandising for the sewing department. You got Michael Kennedy, who I believe was also in merchandising, but at a lower level. And Melissa Bowers, she was in the accounting department. So all of these defendants have been named in the lawsuit as being involved in this whole situation. And they are now JOANN's is still going through its second Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but this lawsuit is being filed separately. And these former JOANN employees are being sued on an individual level because these vendors are claiming, they're basically accusing them of fraudulent misrepresentation and also, I believe, like fraudulent negligence or something like that. We'll take a look at those charges in the lawsuit. So I read the entire thing. This took me several hours, but I really wanted to have a kind of a detailed video, really digging into some of the really minute details that I personally found interesting. So these are what in my opinion, the most interesting parts. We got the lawsuit pulled up here, and I also have some pretty specific notes that I've taken from when I was reading it. So this is the lawsuit. It's fairly long. All right, so I want to start off by going to page 10 because this is kind of important. So the lawsuit goes over who all the players are, the plaintiffs, and then the defendants. All right, so this is pretty key. So it says defendant Robert Will, he goes by Rob, served as JOANN's chief merchandising officer from October 2019 through the petition date. The petition date, I believe, was when JOANN filed for the second bankruptcy in, I believe it was January of 2025. Will served as JOANN's senior vice president of e-commerce and general merchandising manager of Kraft from April 2019 to October 2019, and senior vice president, general merchandising manager of the Kraft division from September 2016 to 2019. So as the chief merchandising manager, Will was the main spokesperson for JOANN with each of the plaintiffs. In that role, Will had a previous and continuing relationship with each plaintiff going back many years before May of 2024. Upon information and belief, defendant Will resides in and is a citizen of Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, so after looking over the entire lawsuit, if I had to say there was sort of a main character in this whole lawsuit, I would say it's Rob Will, the chief merchandising officer. He is in the vast majority of all of the examples given by the plaintiffs. He seemed to have a pretty deep relationship with all of them. He was very friendly with them, like he would go to dinner with some of them, call, text them. So clearly the plaintiffs seemed to have a lot of trust and had built this professional working friendly relationship with Rob Will over a period of quite a few years. And so I would say out of all of the defendants in this lawsuit, Rob Will seems to be the most key JOANN executive involved in all of these allegations. The other guys that were probably like second and third were interim CEO Michael Prendergast and then the interim CFO Jeff Dwyer. But you have to remember, those guys were brought in pretty late in the game. They were only really involved from kind of early-ish of like 2024 to early 2025. So they had only really been around JOANN's for really less than a year. So they did not have a deep relationship with these vendors. So you do have to keep that in mind. So in my opinion, Rob Will seems to be sort of I would say the main player in this whole lawsuit, in my opinion. We're going to talk about something JOANN did called the vendor presentation. JOANN had prepared and disseminated to certain vendors a vendor presentation dated March 25th, 2024 that included similar information for the specific purpose of informing its vendors of the company's strong financial foundation after the 2024 bankruptcy as detailed below. And defendants knew and intended that plaintiffs would rely upon these representations and that the representations provided the plaintiffs with assurances that if the plaintiffs shipped goods to JOANN on credit, then JOANN had the ability to pay for the goods. So JOANN did this for all of these vendor plaintiffs, basically saying, hey, after this first bankruptcy, we're in a much better situation. We've offloaded about $500 million in debt. We've got about $132 million in new financing. And the plaintiffs are claiming that JOANN made assurances to all of them that they had the funds, the future sales, that they would be able to pay their bills and pay all of these vendors for the products that they were going to be shipping to JOANN on credit. On credit's a very important part. So this tidbit involves the plaintiff Advantus. Advantus sold JOANN a number of different products in different categories. Defendant Will, they're referring to Rob Will, stated that he estimated that JOANN's inventory levels would normalize in approximately 2 months and that JOANN needed vendors it could count on to replace other vendors if needed to grow the company's inventory. In other words, defendant Will was seeking Advantus's insurance that it would continue to ship to JOANN on credit by offering Advantus the prospect of more business. Now, Advantus, I imagine that JOANN was probably one of their biggest customers, if not maybe the biggest customer. They shipped JOANN's millions of dollars. They all shipped JOANN's millions of dollars worth of merchandise on credit. So meaning that JOANN's was going to pay them after they received these items. And this was kind of a running theme throughout this lawsuit, was that they're claiming that the JOANN executives would sort of promise, they would sort of dangle carrots in front of them, like, hey, we're going to need some new vendors. This would be more business for you. Hey, we've got these exciting opportunities. We're going to give you a more prominent placement on the website and in the stores. We're going to need much more inventory, meaning more money for you. But in exchange for these like opportunities that JOANN was dangling in front of these vendors, they were asking for a lot. They were asking for all of these basically favors, like favorable terms, like credit, different types of volume discounts, and longer repayment terms. They were trying to get all of that from the vendors, but they were also like trying to promise them something in exchange to possibly motivate these vendors to agree to all of these terms that were much more in JOANN's favor than the vendors. So that opportunity that JOANN's promised Advantus never actually panned out, and it was kind of Advantus is saying it was sort of an empty promise, and that never transpired. And, they're basically saying these people, didn't really fulfill their word that there were. So they would promise all these opportunities, and then the opportunities never came to fruition. Oh, all right, this one's interesting. All right, this one involves the plaintiff, Fairfield. Fairfield had some issues with JOANN paying its bills prior to JOANN's first bankruptcy. So not even the second bankruptcy, but before the first bankruptcy, JOANN had not been paying the money they owed to vendor Fairfield. I believe Fairfield is the one that makes like batting and fiberfill and all types of foam products. So it says approximately 6 to 9 months prior to JOANN's 2024 bankruptcy, plaintiff Fairfield had stopped shipping product to JOANN because it was significantly behind on payments to Fairfield. At that time, Fairfield and JOANN agreed to do business on a cash before delivery basis. So they're like, hey, if we're going to ship you products, you have to pay us first because, you haven't really had a good track record with giving us the money. Meaning JOANN would pay for the goods it ordered from Fairfield before Fairfield shipped product to JOANN. When JOANN emerged from the 2024 bankruptcy, JOANN would not agree to a cash before delivery relationship. Instead, on or about March 20th, 2024, plaintiff Fairfield agreed to ship products to JOANN on credit, but imposed a credit line of $750,000 on JOANN with a 30-day payment term. When the credit limit was reached, JOANN was required to make sufficient payment to Fairfield to stay within the credit limit. During this time frame, JOANN made several representations that the company had never been in a better financial position. And JOANN was pretty much telling that to all of the vendors, according to this lawsuit. So this is kind of interesting. So after this new agreement that Fairfield would be shipping items to JOANN on credit, JOANN kept asking for a larger credit line from Fairfield and longer payment terms. So they ended up giving JOANN a credit line of $2.5 million. That's way higher than $750,000, with a payment term of 65 days to accommodate JOANN's large orders. So JOANN's kept asking them for more and more. And, obviously JOANN was probably one of their biggest clients. So, you kind of have to, you don't want to piss them off. So I kind of get that. So basically JOANN's at one point owed them at least $2.5 million because that's how much their credit line was. And then JOANN's like, I guess, according to Fairfield, they didn't pay the bills, and then nobody was responding. And it's sort of the same deal with, like, pretty much all of the vendors have sort of similar stories where they were trying to get hold of somebody with the company. JOANN's was behind on their payments, and then they never ended up getting paid. All right, so remember, everybody, after the first bankruptcy, JOANN's had brought in Alvarez and Marshall, this consulting firm, to help manage the business, get the restructuring in place after the first bankruptcy. And that's when they brought in Michael Prendergast and Jeff Dwyer. So, all right, this is also from the Fairfield company. Plaintiff Fairfield had a call with defendant Holody. I believe she's the sewing merchandise executive, after the petition date, during which defendant Holody informed Fairfield that A&M was quote-unquote so controlling, and that A&M, i.e. defendants Prendergast and Dwyer, told everyone at JOANN what to say to vendors, including plaintiffs, how to say it. So Fairfield is saying that when they spoke to one of the JOANN executives, they had been told that Alvarez and Marshall was tightly controlling what communication was allowed between JOANN employees and all of these vendors. So they were obviously trying to craft a certain narrative according to these claims. All right, next up. All right, so we're getting into everything going on with Gwen Studios. So Gwen Studios provided a lot of different types of products to JOANN, including things like ribbon, gift wrap, like holidays type items. So a lot of seasonal stuff was provided by Gwen Studios. Basically, Gwen Studios, it seemed like their main point of contact was, again, Rob Will, the chief merchandising officer. All right, so they had some interesting things to say. Gwen Studios congratulated defendant Will on JOANN's new financing agreement, to which Will responded on March 20th, 2024. So this is right after the bankruptcy announcement, the first one. Tell China JOANN is paying them in full tomorrow. That is a fact. Any help you could offer to spread that this is incredible for JOANN and our vendors would be awesome. So from what I understand, Gwen Studios had a lot of items custom manufactured in China for JOANN. So JOANN had requested certain specifications for items, and then Gwen Studios had these items made in China. So really, like, a lot of these costs came from the Chinese manufacturers. Rob Will had also allegedly asked Gwen Studios to vouch for them with other vendors, because it does seem like, according to this lawsuit filing, a lot of the vendors were very skeptical about continuing to work with JOANN after the first bankruptcy, because they were afraid that JOANN was not going to be able to pay them, which it kind of seems like, that's what they're being accused of now. So Gwen Studios actually is saying that they helped out JOANN's by trying to assure some of the other vendors that everything was cool, and they're saying it wasn't. All right, so Gwen Studios had a number of meetings with JOANN executives between the first and the second bankruptcy, and JOANN they were trying to basically butter up Gwen Studios, according to this document, with like new business and new opportunities, these new business awards. All right, but they were having trouble with JOANN's paying them, according to this document. So here's another highlight. Defendant Will, this is Rob Will again, further stated that Gwen Studios was a very important vendor to JOANN and emphasized that the company would need future ribbon shipments, saying that he wanted to get as much in stock at the stores as quickly as possible. So Gwen Studios agreed to this. This is based on discussions and assurances made by defendant Will at the April 17th, 2024 meeting. Gwen Studios agreed to a seasonal ribbon exclusivity agreement with JOANN, agreed to extend JOANN's payment terms, began negotiations with JOANN for a volume rebate, and agreed to, quote, various new programs, including Christmas gift packaging, paper entertaining, and everyday ribbon, which were valued at over $3 million, $1.2 million, and $4.5 million, respectively. Gwen Studios accepted JOANN's orders in these new programs based on defendant Will's assurances that JOANN was in the best financial position in years. Okay, so here's a reference to former CFO Scott Sekala, who pieced out, which I guess now it makes a lot more sense. On May 28th, 2024, CFO Sekala requested that Gwen Studios act as a trade reference for JOANN, which would mean Gwen Studios would recommend JOANN as a business partner if, for example, a new vendor or business supplier wanted assurances on JOANN prior to extending credit to the company. Based on defendant Will's and Sekala's representations that JOANN's was financially sound, Gwen Studios agreed to act as a trade reference for JOANN and provided references from time to time beginning in June 2024. Sekala assured Gwen Studios that JOANN, quote-unquote, really appreciated the partnership. So Gwen Studios really allegedly went out of their way to do favors for their business partner, JOANN's. they acted as a reference, and then they provided them all of these favorable terms, gave them items on credit, and then they all, we're going to get into this, but all of these vendors also made a lot of concessions to JOANN's in terms of something called margin support, rebates, concessions, all of this stuff. Okay, so Gwen Studios, surprise, surprise, like all of these other vendors are stating, that they started having some issues with JOANN paying the bills to them. All right, so here's an interaction. This is kind of funny. This is an interaction between Gwen Studios and Rob Will with JOANN. And I found this one kind of, I'm like, really? All right, on November 12th, 2024, Gwen Studios sent a text to defendant Rob Will stating that it had heard some chatter that JOANN is paying late or in some instances not paying at all on payables due. Anything I need to be concerned about? Gwen Studios further asked, or is that just noise from our last conversation where the new finance team is picking and choosing payables based on previous partnership or lack of to JOANN? So they're saying defendant Will sent a thumbs up emoji, yes, a thumbs up emoji to confirm that Gwen Studios' concern was merely noise. Wow. Yeah. Then, on November 20th, 2024, JOANN insisted on moving up its Halloween ribbon shipment from April to March 2025, which required Gwen Studios to rush production to complete the product by March 2025. Ultimately, Gwen Studios was stuck with JOANN's Halloween ribbon order when JOANN filed the 2025 bankruptcy. Yeah, it's bad timing there because they filed the second bankruptcy, I believe, in early 2025. By December 5th, 2024, JOANN was $4.9 million past due on payments to Gwen Studios. That day, Gwen Studios approached defendant Rob Will about JOANN's past due invoices and sought payment. All right, on December 6th, 2024, defendant Rob Will told Gwen Studios that he, quote-unquote, caught my CFO up in the air last night. Payments will start flowing next week, end quote. So he must be referring to the interim CFO, Jeff Dwyer, the guy from Alvarez and Marshall. Yeah, this is getting kind of wild. All right, next up, Gwen Studios. Yeah, Gwen Studios had quite a wild ride with the JOANN executives. On December 18th, 2024, JOANN continued to push Gwen Studios to move forward with the buttons and trim business. Now, from what I understand, this was going to be a new addition to JOANN's, and they were working with Gwen Studios to add some new items of the buttons and trim for sewing and whatnot. Despite the fact that defendants knew that JOANN had already retained Centerview by that date to market and sell the company, so they were shopping around the company at this time, according to this lawsuit. Defendants failed to instruct JOANN employees to cease ordering goods from Gwen Studios. Yeah. According to Gwen Studios, JOANN kept giving them the runaround about paying them. It says Gwen Studios and defendant Will had a phone call, which he acknowledged that JOANN was late on payments, but stated that JOANN would be current by December 31st, 2024. Obviously that doesn't seem to have happened. Then on January 9th, Gwen Studios, after Gwen Studios said that they were not getting paid, they were not caught up on the past payments from JOANN's, they really didn't want to go forward on this private label button and trim category. So in January, Gwen Studios advised defendant Kennedy, that's the merchandising guy, that the basic inline ribbon business going forward would be ceased. They're like, hey, we're not going to keep working with you guys if we are not going to get paid. We need money. So they were, so that relationship seems to have soured, due to the monetary issues. Let's go on. We're going to go to Plaintiff Ormo, the Turkish company. And this has a very similar theme where, the company had a good relationship with JOANN executives. They had even gone to the Chicago trade show together. They went to dinner. They messaged on WhatsApp. I've never used WhatsApp, by the way. I don't know if you have. It's not really my thing, but Apparently they were active on WhatsApp. They met in Amsterdam. They had dinner. Defendant Rob Will, once again, this guy is like the character in all of these stories pretty much, sent a message to Ormo on WhatsApp stating, "Thank you for the partnership and friendship. I am very excited to see what next year brings." So they were really like trying to maintain like a friendly relationship all while they were allegedly not paying them. So on October 2nd, 2024, defendant Rob Will sent an email to Ormo concerning JOANN's request that Ormo pay JOANN $842,000 for margin support. And he's like, what? He's like, WTF, man. All right, so margin support refers to various ways that vendors provide financial assistance to retailers to help them maintain or improve their profit margin. So like, I guess if the items aren't selling for what they'd hoped for, if they had to discount the items. JOANN had been asking for various forms of like financial support in terms of like discounts, concessions, rebates, even like straight up cash. Like in one of these examples, the vendor was saying that JOANN asked them for money to help pay for shipping from China all the way to the United States. And the vendor paid like $130,000 to help pay for the shipping costs. This is kind of new, and I thought this was definitely worth mentioning. Defendant Michael Prendergast assured Ormo that JOANN was doing financially well and also stated that a new permanent CEO had been selected and the company would announce the new CEO at the end of December 2024. This is stated a few different times in the lawsuit, so I'm really curious. They never did announce the new CEO in December of 2024. I'm curious to see who it was supposed to be. Michael Prendergast was the interim CEO. They never did announce who the new CEO was going to be. And then it goes on to say, needless to say, none of the representations made by defendants Prendergast or Dwyer to Ormo during that December 3rd meeting were true. Yeah, and again, more WhatsApp messages from Rob Will to Ormo. I cannot thank. So it's like a lot of like, I gotta say, my impression of this is like Rob Will was sort of like the hype man, you know, kind of greasing the wheels with the vendors, according to these statements. You know, he's like, I cannot thank you enough for all of your support and partnership. I know we can push the business to $50 million. Thanks for bringing the innovation. I am confident we will find ways to optimize our order flow and drive more profitable growth for both of us. Now, this is December 4th of 2024, which is like a month from when they filed the second bankruptcy. So like, you know, I can see why the vendors would think, hey, wouldn't at that point they kind of know something's up? Plus at that point, it looks like JOANN's had been shopping around the company for a sale at that point. So they're claiming that these JOANN executives should have known that the writing was on the wall, you know, by that time. So Springs Creative, again, very similar. And again, all of these vendors have very similar experiences that they're recounting in this lawsuit. Following JOANN's emergence from the 2024 bankruptcy, JOANN renegotiated its payment terms with Springs Creative and obtained a 65-day payment term from a 30-day payment term for goods ordered on credit from Springs Creative. In May 2024, and this is very bizarre, Springs Creative began receiving large, unprecedented orders from JOANN, which continued over the next several months. Springs Creative ran up its accounts receivables to get JOANN's inventory levels up following the 2024 bankruptcy, with accounts receivables up to $4 million by June 2024. So they're saying that JOANN was ordering way more than they did before, all on credit and with a longer payment term. On June 19th, 2024, Springs Creative approached defendants again, Rob Will and Heather Holody concerning the $4 million Springs Creative had extended in credit to JOANN and requested that JOANN agree to a 30-day payment term. So they wanted to take it back down to 30 days from 65 days in exchange for a 2% discount for July and August 2024 payables to close the gap on the large amount of credit outstanding to JOANN. Defendant Will responded, "Unfortunately, this deal does not work for us. We are in the best financial position we have been in for over 12 years, and this is the lowest risk to you and your bankers." So again, another another example with Rob Will deeply involved in these vendor communications, which is interesting. So they're saying that he would not agree to a shorter payment term even for a little discount. So they're implying that, they're wondering about the financial state if they wouldn't even be able to pay their accounts receivables in, 30 days. All right. Yeah. So the Springs Creative continued to provide JOANN goods on credit. Again, that's pretty much what they were doing with all of these vendors, according to the lawsuit. Now we're going to get to the plaintiff Low Tech Toy, a company that had only started doing business with JOANN in late 2023. Once again, their main point of contact was Chief Merchandising Officer Rob Will, and they had done so JOANN had kind of hyped up Low Tech Toy, according to these documents, with these promises that they would get a lot more business with JOANN. It was going to be like a store-to-store concept, which included in-store activations, events, branded sections, more prominent featuring on the website. And Rob Will allegedly told Low Tech Toy that he wanted to bring in a lot more products from this company. He reportedly had assured Low Tech Toy that they were in a good position and that they really wanted to work with Low Tech Toy to get a lot more products from this company. So in August of 2024, Low Tech Toy began to ship significantly more inventory to JOANN on credit, including additional new products, which included 20 shipments of product in August and September of 2024 alone, totaling $5.13 million. Some of the crochet kits ordered by JOANN required Low Tech Toy to pay licensing fees, which ultimately would not be reimbursed by JOANN. Oh, so look, man, this is kind of like, if this really is true, that's really disappointing. So they had all of these, Low Tech Toy says they had all these meetings with Rob Will, Michael Prendergast, Jeffrey Dwyer, and some other, A&M representatives with Alvarez and Marshall. So they were kind of, again, being hyped up that JOANN was doing fine, that they felt like JOANN was a $2.5 billion business, great EBITDA, cash flow, wanted new products, and they were really kind of giving them this like pie in the sky outlook that they were really gonna have a much bigger working relationship with Low Tech Toy. They thought Low Tech Toy could do $8 to $10 million worth of business with JOANN in the next year. They were talking about trying to get exclusivity with the company so that they would not sell to JOANN competitors. I mean, yeah, so here's everything that Low Tech Toy is saying that JOANN had kind of gotten their hopes up about: more online sales, a banner on the company's homepage, all this other stuff. So I found that pretty interesting, especially since it sounded like they all considered Rob Will to be, kind of a professional working friend, I guess, and that's pretty, and they're saying, and all of these vendors are claiming that they felt deceived by JOANN and the executives and the employees they dealt with. Once again, what these JOANN executives were telling the vendors as late as December of 2024. All right, so this says, instead, defendants concealed the truth and continued to recklessly, negligently, and or fraudulently misrepresent facts to plaintiffs. As an example, and as set forth above, defendants Dwyer and Prendergast made representations to plaintiff Ormo on December 3rd, 2024. That was like a month before the second bankruptcy was filed, that JOANN was doing well and that a new CEO had been appointed and would be announced soon. These representations occurred just 6 days before JOANN retained Centerville to market the company for sale. Yeah, like I know lawsuits can be kind of, dull sometimes, but I actually found the details of this to be like kind of fascinating and like in a really weird way. I did find this pretty interesting. What does everybody think so far? By the way, if you are finding this video interesting or informative, subscribe to Sew and Report Live. I know a lot of you that watch are not yet subscribed, so join the party. We cover sewing and crafts news, and I do some commentary here. All right, now we're going to get to something called Project Flywheel. So this was a cost savings program developed by defendants Prendergast and Dwyer. Again, those are the Alvarez and Marshall guys. And their A&M colleagues for JOANN that involved JOANN asking each vendor to provide that margin support to cut losses with JOANN's vendors using JOANN's prior sales of plaintiffs' products as the basis for the amounts JOANN requested from each plaintiff. Plaintiffs' business relationships with JOANN spanned 4 years to 40 years, and JOANN had never approached any plaintiff with such a request in the past. So they prepared these vendor packets. Again, according to the lawsuit, all of the vendors got these packets with, sales data and financial numbers for each one. And they were asked for all of this margin support. So rebates, sometimes straight up money, and basically the money would be credited to JOANN. If there was quote unquote money owed, JOANN's accounting department was allegedly just marking that off of what they owed to these vendors. So JOANN had asked the vendor Advantus for $762,000 in margin support. So Advantus is saying that their ask was based on inaccurate data and incorporated loss JOANN experienced from companies other than Advantus. It is unclear whether JOANN or Alvarez and Marshall ever recalculated its erroneous ask of $762,000 or requested a new accurate margin support of Advantus. All right, so again, here is Advantus emailed defendant Rob Will. He seems to be the main player in all of these situations. So just for my non-lawyer, opinion, it seems like he seems to be the one, according to the vendors, that had his fingers in the pot the most. Just saying. Then after that, I would say it's Michael Prendergast and Jeffrey Dwyer, the guys from Alvarez and Marshall. So they emailed Rob Will concerning the company's past due balance of over $800,000 and requested that JOANN provided its second quarter 2024 financial statements. In addition to the margin support request, JOANN continued to seek additional money from Advantus. On October 31st, 2024, Defendant Bauer sent an email to Advantus stating, that's the accountant, stating that JOANN had recently completed a financial audit across fiscal year 2024 and 2025 and has determined that Advantus owes damages per the terms of JOANN and Advantus's agreement of $32,385 and that JOANN had incurred incremental damages of $34,022 for which the company was seeking contribution. Defendant Bauer stated, "The $32,000 will be taken as a credit in our system. Please respond by email your contribution on the $34,000 of incremental damages we have incurred." Wow. November 21st, 2024, defendant Rob Will accepted. Okay, so they had gone back and forth with JOANN's on how much margin support they would provide to JOANN's, and they agreed on $100,000, but only if JOANN's paid their account to be current. So Advantus would provide them the $100,000 in this support money, but JOANN's had to pay their bills. Defendant Rob Will further stated, "We appreciate your partnership and look forward to driving mutual growth." And then on November 2nd, 2024, defendant Jeff Dwyer told Advantus that JOANN would apply Advantus's $100,000 margin support payment to upcoming open accounts and further stated, "We appreciate your partnership and look forward to driving mutual growth." And then on November 26th, a JOANN buyer had emailed Advantus stating that JOANN was current on its Advantus accounts and requested shipment. According to this lawsuit, JOANN was not current in its accounts, and someone at JOANN must have instructed the buyer to request shipment from Advantage with the false knowledge that JOANN was current on its account. So they're saying the purpose of this email was clear: to try to induce or trick Advantus to ship to JOANN on the false notion that JOANN has paid Advantus its outstanding balance. Oh, I mean, wow. Wow, wow, wow. This was the company, I think they sold like fabric and textiles. On October 17th, 2024, Springs Creative had a call with defendants Prendergast, Dwyer, and Will, as well as 2 other Alvarez and Marshall representatives. During that call, defendant Prendergast discussed JOANN's strong financial position and explained JOANN's 3-pronged strategy for growth. JOANN further asked Springs Creative for an all-in dilution support ask of $353,000. The following day, defendant Will confirmed JOANN's request of $353,000 and provided Springs Creative with a vendor packet prepared by A&M and an Excel spreadsheet, which purportedly provided support for the dilution support ask. All right, in October, Springs Creative and defendants Rob Will, Michael Prendergast, and Jeffrey Dwyer negotiated terms of the margin support request. And on October 21st, 2024, Springs Creative agreed to provide JOANN with a $250,000 margin support payment in exchange for a payment schedule for JOANN's outstanding invoices of $3.5 million proposed by defendant Dwyer. So they settled on, instead of $353,000, $250,000, but only if JOANN started paying their outstanding bills. Also on October 21st, 2024, defendant Rob Will stated, "We hope this is workable so we can get all of our minds pivoted to growth initiatives to drive our business." Ultimately, JOANN deducted Springs Creative's margin support from JOANN's outstanding invoices without Springs Creative's approval and without becoming current on overdue invoices, despite the parties' agreement otherwise. Well, that just seems par for the course for this whole, for all of these, this documentation. All right. In addition, a divisional merchandise manager reached out to Springs Creative to push back shipment of a $1.64 million order placed by JOANN, essentially asking Springs Creative to buy back inventory. Springs Creative will now be forced to sell the inventory ordered by JOANN at significantly lower margins, if not at a loss. Those are, in my opinion, the biggest bombshells from this lawsuit. These former JOANN executives and employees are being accused of quite a few different things in this lawsuit, including common law fraud, fraudulent misrepresentation in several states, common law fraud, and some, not all of these counts are against all of the defendants. It's like whichever defendants that this company had the most contact with. Yeah, I mean, it's all, negligent misrepresentation in Florida, negligent misrepresentation, innocent misrepresentation in Connecticut, negligent misrepresentation in Ohio. Don't know how this is going to shake out. We don't know what the defense is going to be like from all of these defendants. This is still very early on. This could settle. This could get thrown out. It could get removed. We really don't know at this point. This is just what this civil lawsuit is stating. And these plaintiffs all are claiming to suffer multi-million-dollar damages each. Advantus, $6.4 million. Fairfield, $3 million. Ormo, $8.6 million. Gwen Studios, $5.3 million. And also a bunch of damages. Springs Creative, $2 million. Low Tech Toy, $8 million. So they are really looking for a lot of money from this. And again, this is separate from the main JOANN bankruptcy case out of Delaware. I spent a lot of time looking at this and trying to figure out what I felt were the most interesting parts of the lawsuit. I know it's not like a lot of people don't really consider legal documents exciting, but some of the details I actually did find, interesting to me as a, sewing and craft person. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. What do you think was the most surprising, shocking part of this lawsuit filing? Do you think this is all true? How much of this do you think is accurate? Because again, this is all coming from the perspective of the plaintiffs, the former vendors, and not from, and it's meant to make the defendants look bad, obviously. So we're going to see what happens, but it does, in my opinion, seem like the biggest player in this is former Chief Merchandising Officer Rob Will, and that makes sense because he, again, merchandising is, getting all the inventory, working with all the vendors. So it seems like he was their main point of contact. So I know this video has been super long. It's not going to have a ton of editing. I'm trying to get this out as quickly as possible. I'm also working on another angle. I'm going to give you a little hint. It involves one of the people named in this lawsuit. I think I found another interesting angle to research, so I'm looking into things, and I will be hopefully reporting back with something in the near future. But I need to do a little bit more legwork. But it does involve someone that is named in this lawsuit. Anyways, I hope you found this interesting. I am Jen with Sewing Report Live. Again, here covering what's going on in the world of sewing and crafts. You can also check out my main channel, The Sewing Report, for sewing, embroidery, crafts videos. You can also shop my Etsy at sewingreport.etsy.com. I will see you again in the next one.